On Christmas Eve, while the entire city glowed with festive lights, I was still sitting alone in a high-rise office, finishing the last tasks of the year. It had been 3 years since my husband, Rowan, said he had to work far from home. Then my phone vibrated. A large transfer notification appeared, along with a sweet message saying he'd sent me a gift, waiting downstairs in the lobby. My heart warmed, the exhaustion melting away. But just as I lifted the dark green-wrapped box, a janitor named Mara suddenly rushed toward me. Her face went pale. Her hands trembled as she grabbed my wrist, whispering in panic, begging me to comment, "1." I followed Zola's frantic gaze, my heart pounding. She pointed at the silver ribbon and told me to look closely at how it was tied. It wasn't a normal gift bow, but 2 rigid loops crossed together, cold and unnatural. Zola swallowed hard and spoke in a shaking voice. Back in her hometown, that knot was a funeral knot, used only to bind the feet of the dead or to seal items meant for someone who had already passed. The living, she said, would pay with their life if they opened it. I almost laughed, telling myself it was just superstition. I was modern, educated. How could I believe something like that? But when I looked into her reddened eyes, filled with genuine fear, my smile faded. We drove out of the city center to a deserted stretch along the riverbank, where there was nothing but cold wind and black, motionless water. I held the box in my arms, my heart racing, terrified, yet still struggling to believe any of it was real. Zola stood beside me, urgently telling me to throw it away immediately. I took a deep breath and with all my strength, hurled the box into the river. For the first few seconds, the silence was terrifying. Then the water suddenly began to bubble violently. White smoke rose up and the sharp scent of bitter almonds rushed into my nose, making me gasp for air. Almost instantly, a strange blue flame burst out, licking across the spot where the box had just sunk. My legs went weak. If I had opened that gift at home, I wouldn't be alive. And in that same moment, any remaining faith I had in my marriage shattered completely. Before I could even steady myself, my phone vibrated. The screen lit up with a familiar name, Rowan, a video call. I glanced at Zola. She gave a small nod, reminding me to stay calm. My husband's face appeared on the screen, still wearing that gentle, familiar smile, his voice full of concern. He asked if I'd received the gift yet, if I liked it, why I hadn't opened it. Listening to those sweet words, my stomach twisted. Just minutes earlier, that very gift had nearly killed me. The contrast between his caring tone and the truth I had just witnessed made me feel sick. For the first time, I understood clearly. Whatever love I once had for him was already dead. Zola took me back to her small room, then quietly pulled out an old photo frame with worn edges. Her voice trembled as she spoke about her daughter, Dahlia, who had died 5 years earlier in what was labeled a perfectly staged accident. It was the same pattern, a gift sent from far away, the same kind of explosion that left no trace behind. I leaned in to look at the photo, and my heart nearly stopped. The man standing beside Dahlia, wearing that all-too-familiar smile, was Caspian. Zola said that after her daughter's death, he collected the insurance payout and disappeared without a trace. Everything lined up with chilling precision. This wasn't an accident. It was a carefully calculated chain of murders. What do you think about Zola as a character and the choices she made? Leave a comment and share your thoughts. That night, I returned to my apartment with my hands still shaking. Zola's words echoed relentlessly in my mind. I opened my laptop and began tracing financial records I had never paid attention to before. Then I froze. On the screen was a life insurance policy worth $2 million taken out in my name. The sole beneficiary was Caspian. The policy had been signed during the same period when he kept calling, sounding deeply concerned about my health. I still remembered his gentle voice when he said it was just a precaution for the future. Unable to sit still any longer, I called my younger brother, the only person I trusted at that moment. He's a cybersecurity specialist, and after hearing my story, he immediately began checking the emails, phone calls, and IP addresses Caspian had used. Less than an hour later, his message sent a chill through my spine. Caspian had never been in Dubai. For the past 3 years, every signal had originated from Chicago. The late-night calls, the luxury backdrops, the stories about distant construction projects, every detail had been part of a perfectly staged performance. I realized I hadn't just been betrayed in my marriage. My entire life had been manipulated. The man I'd waited for over 3 years had never actually left the city. I followed Caspian for several days, and the truth was more brutal than I could have imagined. He lived in a luxury apartment, holding hands with a younger woman, with a small child behind them, calling him Dad. They laughed, shared dinners, and enjoyed a picture-perfect family, paid for with the very money I'd been sending for 3 years. The image of a struggling husband working overseas collapsed completely. Every sacrifice I made had only laid the foundation for his lavish life. In that moment, I didn't cry anymore. I understood that if I stayed silent, I would be the next victim. It was time to strike back. Comment 4 if you agree. I didn't act rashly. I knew I was facing someone who had already killed and who had never hesitated. I sought out a former investigator who had once handled the case of Zola's daughter, a case he had been forced to close for lack of evidence. After listening to everything I told him, he sat in silence for a long time before saying it plainly. This wasn't an accident. It was a methodical killer. From that moment on, I was no longer alone. We began planning step by step, gathering financial evidence, tracking behavior, and preparing to document Caspian's next mistake, waiting patiently for him to slip. That night, Caspian returned to the apartment wearing a mask of perfect concern. He made me a warm glass of milk, his voice so gentle it was chilling. I pretended to drink it, then lay down and breathed evenly, as if I were asleep. Through a hidden camera, I watched him begin to act. The kitchen door closed. The gas valve was turned slowly, precise, deliberate, cold. The smell spread through the sealed space. My heart raced, but my mind stayed clear. I waited until he left, then sprang up, shut off the gas, and opened the windows. In a desolate place with nowhere left to deny the truth, Caspian confessed to everything. No script, no mask. Justice arrived late, but it arrived. The long chain of tragedy that had stretched on for years finally came to an end. After all of it, Zola and I chose not to live in hatred. We opened a small flower shop named Dahlia, a way to preserve memory and turn loss into healing. Every flower there reminds me of one thing. Intuition is never without reason, and awareness can sometimes be the very thing that saves a life. If this story left you with a thought of your own, feel free to share a few words. I'm still here, listening.